Hi friends, this is Caitlin. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm making a really fun and sweet pop-up card using these little rainy day fair wheeze from Sweet November Stamps. I've used this set before, but I hadn't ever used the two little fairies that are hiding under that mushroom. And I just thought they would be the sweetest in one of these pop-up envelope cards, which is what we're making today. So I'm going to start out by stamping my main image as well as the little snail from the stamp set as well. He'll get added here in a second. And I'm so glad that I included him because to me, he brings the scene kind of into the envelope so it feels more cohesive versus just, you know, a little mushroom stuck in the middle of an envelope. So I did stamp them down a couple times. I used my Honeybee Stamps Intense Black ink with my Copic Express It paper. I'm also taking some Honeybee Stamps pattern paper. This was like a dots and stripes pattern paper pack that I had from, I think, a couple years ago. So the dies that I'm using are this pop-up envelope set from Pink and Main. And we're using the bigger back part. I cut twice, once from this blue and once from white because the blue wasn't big enough across for me to cut the whole thing out. So I also like it this way because it makes it a lot sturdier having that double layer. So I cut the full back piece out of this white cardstock and I'm just folding and reinforcing those tabs on the score lines that are already embossed from the die. And then I trimmed off the tabs on that darker blue and I'm going to just adhere it down with liquid glue directly to that white piece. So now it's just going to act as one cohesive part. And I use the stripes facing out on the dark and I'm using the dots facing out on the lighter blue that we're using. And this gets inserted like it's, you know, the inside of a fancy envelope when you lift that flap up and it has that like lining in it. And then these pieces all go together, still layered the same way with the dark stripe. This is going to be the bottom fold part of our envelope. This is going to go across the front. And then that long rectangle of light blue that you see over to the right, that's going to be our kind of middle shelf that our scene is going to go on. But I just prepped all of these. We won't actually assemble the card until we have our scene ready to go. So to color in all of these little wheeze, I decided to use my pattern paper as a guide for my color choices. I wanted this to be a little like gloomy, but in a, this sounds so silly, gloomy, but in a fun way. Like everything's a little bit muted, a little less saturated, but still colors, like still not just rainy, like gray, right? Like I'm using warm grays here for the mushroom, but we're going to bring in some like blue violets and some blue greens and some regular greens. But it's a very like cool toned kind of rainy spring vibes. So for these warm grays, I use them for the main stalk of the mushroom as well as for underneath this mushroom cap. And I'm just following the artist drawn lines with this so that the darkest shades are right close in the center there to where the stalk meets the mushroom cap, and then it's lighter out towards the edges, just kind of filling in everything with that W3. And then for the mushroom cap itself, I really wanted to bring in a different color than I would normally be drawn to. So I went with this BV29, and this is what I mean. Like these are so fun, and I think the color really helps it read spring, but they're still so muted compared to like a true bright purple. So the BV 29, 25, and 23 really helped kind of bring this little mushroom to life. And then even for the raindrops, I'm bringing in some BG 72, where normally I would be drawn to like the brighter like BG 23, maybe 32 or 11, like really bright, cheery teals, where these are just a little bit softer. And I had a lot of fun playing with the shading and highlighting on those little dewdrops or raindrops. I just think they're so cute. And we're going to also add some shine to them later, which will really help them, like, bring them to life. So even for the ground, instead of going with like a really warm orangey brown, I'm pulling in some E40s, which are still a little more on the neutral side, where like this E70s would be more of like a purple. These at least are still a little softer and more neutral, definitely not in that orangey red kind of brown space. And I use the same E40s for my little snail, his shell. So I'm starting out with the E49, then bringing in that 47 and just following the curve of his shell all the way around, filling in with 44. And I'll bring in some more of the darker shades just to kind of break it up and start creating a little bit of a pattern along his shell, just kind of pulling color out from the spiral. For my little snail himself, I'm going with some very light greens, some YG 95 and 93. You can see my cap is leaking there on my glass top as well. And then just a little touch of G40 to fill in his sweet little face. Because I had already used those BG70s for the rain, I thought it would be really fitting to bring them back in for the raincoats. So I'm going to start out with the BG75, laying in the shadow, like under the arms, where the fabric is kind of bunched up, or along their backs, where the light really wouldn't be hitting their backs because they're under that mushroom. And then blending that out with the BG72 and BG70. I also brought in the tiniest little bit of the BV20s that I used for the mushroom cap when it was time to shade in the little collars on their raincoats, as well as the one little girl you can see just like a sliver of her dress underneath. I'll bring those back in there as well. For the wings, I kept it really light with some BG11 and BG10. I always keep that darkest color down towards like the center root of their wings where they would attach to their back. And I brought in those BV20s for their rain boots as well. So just a touch on the collars and then on their little rain boots. I tried to keep these pretty simple. They're drawn really simply, so there isn't like a ton of work to do there. That's why I love these little Wees from Sweet November Stamps. They're really, there's enough detail that you can really take your time and create a true little scene, but there's not so much detail that it feels overwhelming. Like they come together pretty quickly, these little guys. For the Fair Wee over on the right hand side, I'm giving her a little bit of a medium to deeper skin tone, and so she's going to have really dark hair as well. My other Wee is going to be a lot more fair with a lighter hair. I really enjoy kind of switching up skin tones and hair colors and pushing myself to try different combinations. And I think these two just make a really great pair. So I brought in those E40 markers one more time for this darker brunette hair. And then for the other little girl, she's going to have a base of E04 that just gives a nice little shadow to her skin tone. Then we'll bring in a little E13, E11, and maybe just like a touch of E00, where the first skin tone combo was an E18, 15, 13. And they're both going to get little rosy cheeks. The pink wasn't showing up as much as I wanted for both of them, so I brought in a little R21 as well as R20. And then I'm still using those E40 markers for the lighter hair, but this time my darkest shade is my E44, which was my lightest shade on that first combo. So this way all of the tones in the card still kind of go together and everything feels connected. And you can see I'm even bringing in like a little touch of the E47 really lightly, but by bringing in that 43 and even like a little touch of a very, very warm, pale E-marker, I think it's, yeah, here we go, 51, will help pull it to blonde versus brunette. So I'm bringing in lots of the same colors, but the way that we apply them and the amount that we're applying really helps them to give a very different look. So you can do a lot with a very minimal color palette. You don't have to have every marker to be able to make a really beautiful scene. I did fussy cut these out, and again, I love the Wii's because they are simple enough that they generally are okay for me to fussy cut. I do not enjoy fussy cutting. And so once I had them trimmed out, I am going to add them to the back of this little shelf that we're going to be adding to our pop-up envelope. I did cover the back with some washi just because my tape runner, I'd applied a little bit extra and I didn't want it to stick to the back of the card when we attached everything together. Then I went in and stamped my sentiment. I went with the I love you, rain or shine, right across the front of our envelope. I thought that was so cute, and I just stamped that with black ink. I thought it was better to just keep it simple. These little tabs on the side of our middle panel are pretty small, so I'm going in with 1/8 inch tear tape, easy tear tape, and I'm gonna apply it once and then peel the backing paper and apply it again, because the tabs aren't wide enough to have two pieces side by side, but I was worried one piece wasn't gonna do it. Once I had the backing paper removed, it's really easy to just pop this middle shelf piece into place. It doesn't even have to be like in a specific spot. I just wanted it to be a little higher than the bottom of our envelope. I attach one side and then fold it like onto itself basically, and then use the other side to kind of close the gap. And it's really easy to assemble it that way so that you know everything lays out nice and straight and everything folds beautifully, because this whole thing folds flat to fit into an A2 sized envelope. Once I had that ready, I put the thicker tear tape on those bigger tabs at the very front, and we're gonna pop our front piece into the same exact way, kind of doing one side and then folding everything over flat so that it lines up on the other side, giving it a good squish back and forth to make sure that everything is going to lay flat. And then now's when I decided to add my snail to the very front. I wasn't sure if I was going to put him in the scene or on the front, but I really thought, again, that he helped tie the scene into the envelope and helped kind of attach our little Wii's to the sentiment visually. So I added some ground shading there, something so that he doesn't look like he's just floating in space, and attached him on. And I'm also going to add a little bit of this Ranger, glossy accents to his little snail trail, as well as the raindrops. And I'm going to add some glitter onto my little fairy's wings. This is just a little bit of iridescent glitter that I've had for forever. It doesn't even have like a brand name on it, but I thought I was done. And then I realized that the background felt too open to me. It felt like it was just missing something. So I decided to take a scrap of my Copic Express It, and I grabbed this Lawn Fawn grassy dye. I'm sure it has a different, like grassy hills or grassy something dye. And I am using some of the same like really light gray markers. It might not be exactly the same as the snail, but it definitely has the same idea. And I am just starting to break up that bottom edge where the dye stops so that it gives some shading and shadow to each of those pieces of grass. And I'm just going to keep kind of going back in with all these colors, these light, very light G markers. The G24, I think it's like a G43 and a G40. And then just going back and forth, like I said, kind of breaking up that color. And then I'm going to come back through from the bottom one more time with our lighter two shades. And this is going to get popped or get added right behind our pop-up scene. So it's already going to have a little bit of depth literally, but giving some darkness to the bottom here with this G43 is really going to help to visually give extra depth where it's darker down, where it kind of sinks below the ground line on that little shelf that we made. So I added some tape runner, and I'm just going to slip this in from the top and just kind of press it down when it looks like it's in the right space. But I think this little added layer helps to break up so it's not just one giant sheet of blue, and really helps to push our fair wheeze even further to the front. So I am so in love with how this scene turned out. I hope that you enjoyed it too. The pop-up envelope is so easy to use. I highly recommend you check it out. I just enjoy this one so much. I'm so ready for spring card making. I hope that you have an amazing day, and I'll see you guys back here soon. Until next time, happy crafting.